All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to step into the shoes of top-tier management consultants who've just been hired to solve a really tricky business problem. Our client is in serious trouble, and the clock is ticking.
So, let's get right to it. Here's the central puzzle the CEO has hired us to solve. For the past 2 years, the bank has been growing like crazy. They're adding customers, and their revenues are up. But here's the kicker. Despite all that apparent success, their profits haven't just dipped, they've completely vanished. How on earth is that possible? That's the mystery we have to unravel.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll start by really understanding the challenge. Then we'll structure our thinking like a consultant would, diagnose the root cause, pinpoint the exact issue, craft a winning solution, and then at the end, pull out the key lessons. Let's get started.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. Our client is a major commercial bank in Mexico. And when I say major, I mean it. They're a huge player, holding about 20% of the market share. But right now, they're facing a critical situation that's threatening their entire business.
So, that's the challenge, straight from the CEO's mouth. The mandate couldn't be clearer. We've got two objectives: find the cause and propose a solution. And the deadline? It's tight. We've got 1 week. The pressure is definitely on.
Now, before we even touch a spreadsheet or look at a single piece of data, we need a plan. We need a framework. This is what really separates professional analysis from just, guessing. We need a clean, logical way to break this whole problem down into pieces we can actually solve.
And to do that, top consultants use a principle called MEIS. I know, it sounds super jargony, but it's actually a really simple and powerful idea. It just means breaking a problem into pieces that don't overlap. That's the mutually exclusive part, and that, when you add them all up, they cover the entire problem with nothing left out. That's the collectively exhaustive part. It just ensures our analysis is airtight.
So our approach here is going to be super straightforward, just 2 logical steps. First, we play detective. We have to diagnose the why. We need to find the absolute root cause of this profit decline. And only when we are 100% certain we found the real problem can we move on to step 2, building the how, a concrete plan to actually fix it.
All right, let's get into the diagnosis. We're going to start broad and then, layer by layer, peel this thing back until we find the real source of the problem.
So, using that MEIS framework we just talked about, we start with 3 big, distinct questions, our initial hypotheses. 1. Is this an industry-wide storm that's hitting everybody? 2. Is the issue internal to our clients' revenues? Or 3. Is it all about their costs? Asking these questions helps us figure out where we need to start digging.
So we run the numbers, and right away something huge jumps out. Yeah, other banks in Mexico have seen profits dip a little bit, but it's been pretty moderate. Our client, on the other hand, is in a nosedive, deep into the red. And that tells us one thing for sure. This isn't an industry storm hitting all ships. No, this is a massive leak in our own boat.
Okay, so since we've ruled out all the external, industry-wide stuff, we know exactly where to look next. The problem is internal. It has to be something specific to how this bank is managing its own fundamental profit equation. That simple relationship between their revenues and their costs.
And this right here is where the investigation gets really interesting. In pretty much every case like this, after all the structured analysis, you come across a single piece of data, one chart, that just blows the whole mystery wide open. And trust me, this is that moment.
The client slides this chart across the table. Now, take a look. What's so fascinating about this is what it tells us about the bank's entire growth strategy. You see 2 key lines here, both plotted against the number of customers. Let's really break this down.
And wow, this chart just lays the whole paradox bare. Look at those 2 lines. The top one, the one sloping down, that's the average revenue per customer. The more customers they get, the less money they make from each one. Meanwhile, that flat horizontal line, that's the average cost to serve a customer. And it's stable. See the problem? When revenue per person is going down, but the cost per person is staying the same, you're heading straight for a cliff.
You see right where those lines cross? That's the magic number. 5 million customers. Back then, things were good. The bank was profitable. The average revenue they brought in from a customer was higher than what it cost to serve them. This was a healthy, functioning business.
But now, look where we are today. 8 million customers. The bank just kept growing, but in doing so, they blew right past that critical intersection point. They've added 3 million new customers who, on average, cost more to take care of than the money they bring in.
Think about that for a second. Every new customer they sign up in this zone is a net loss. They are literally paying people to be their customers.
So the big question is, why? How could this possibly happen? Well, the investigation points to a classic business mistake: misaligned incentives. It turns out branch managers were getting bonuses based on one thing and one thing only: signing up new customers. Any new customer. Nobody was asking if these new accounts were actually profitable. So the bank was rewarding growth for growth's sake, and it was driving them straight into the ground.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the disease. Now it's time to prescribe the cure. And as good consultants, we never just give one option. We lay out a few choices with clear trade-offs and then guide them to our top recommendation. So let's walk through what we'd present to the CEO. All right, option 1, the simple fix. We could just tell the bank to turn back time, cut those last 3 million customers you acquired, downsize the branches and the staff you hired to support them, and boom, you're profitable again. It's clean, but it's a really blunt tool. You're giving up a huge chunk of market share, and that could really hurt the brand's reputation. Okay, solution 2 is a little more sophisticated. We'll call it the better fix. Here, we try to attack both of those lines on the chart. We'd work to increase the average revenue, maybe with new fee-based products, and at the same time, find ways to lower the average cost through efficiencies. This is definitely better, but it's still kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. It lacks a targeted action plan.
And that brings us to our final recommendation, the optimal fix. The best solution, the one that builds real, sustainable, long-term value, is to stop treating all 8 million customers as if they're the same. We need to implement a strategy of smart, strategic customer segmentation.
So here's what that actually looks like in practice. We create tiers. For your high-value customers, your VIPs, the ones making you real money, you roll out the red carpet. Give them dedicated bankers, special services. That keeps them happy and brings in even more revenue. Now, for your lower-value customers, you gently guide them toward cheaper channels, like ATMs or online banking. You might limit their free in-person teller visits and then charge a small fee. This does two things. It either generates a little new revenue, or it encourages them to use the less expensive channels. The bottom line is you're finally aligning the cost to serve a customer with the value they actually bring to the bank.
So, after this whole deep dive into this one Mexican bank's crisis, what's the big picture lesson here? What should we, as strategic thinkers, really take away from this case?
Well, for me, it comes down to 4 huge takeaways. First, and this is a big one, all growth is not good growth. You have to chase profitable growth. Second, be really careful with high-level averages. They can hide some seriously dangerous truths. You've got to dig deeper. Third, customer segmentation is one of the most powerful tools in business to align your costs with the value you receive. And finally, incentives drive everything. Whatever you measure and reward, that is what you will get.
And that leaves us with a final question to chew on. This banker's paradox, it isn't just a problem for banks, right? It's a trap any growing business can fall into, chasing new clients, new users, new projects, without ever stopping to ask if they're actually profitable. So the real question for you is, where might this kind of unprofitable growth be hiding in your own world?